this gun and how to make it local and also give it haptics. My hands are literally shaking right now. To start us off, we're going to create a gun that uses haptic feedback as well as local visual effects and sound effects. To get us started, let's all go ahead and create a simple gun. Once you've designed your gun and a few bullets, you'll note that I've just kind of made my bullets match this. I've also made them a little bit longer because I don't intend for anybody to see them. They're just going to be flying, and so having longer bullets means they'll be easier to be seen. I've made it all have this really nice metal sheen, and then I've used this trigger here to represent where the object bullet is going to fire from. And so we don't want it to fire from the object gun because the gun is collidable. So if a collidable bullet spawns inside of a collidable gun, it's going to ricochet and cause a bunch of bouncing. It doesn't work. So we use this trigger here. And so once you get your trigger in position, you can go ahead and turn it off. So take enabled and disable it. You can also use your snapping tool to snap it to the front of the gun. And then after that, I've slid it out just a hair. So that way, when this bullet spawns in at the position of the trigger, it definitely doesn't hit the tip of the gun. You'll also note that I've got 4 bullets here, and I'm using 4 bullets because we're going to create a list and then cycle through that list to choose a bullet. With that out of the way, we're going to click with our pointer finger. We can joystick to the right to grow our cursor, and I'm going to slide through the trigger first, then through the gun, and then through the rest of the gun here. And then when we group it together, and then open up the properties panel. From the properties panel, make sure to make it interactive. We'll give it grabbable and physics, so we'll hit both. Gravity's on. We're not going to use custom gravity, but physics material will set to be metal. Awesome. And then if we go to our More tab, you'll see Grab Anchor. So let's also use Grab Lock so that way you don't have to keep holding on to it. And we'll use Grab Anchor. And then once we have Grab Anchor set up, you'll see this little hand icon appear. And what you'll also note is this grab anchor is pointing forward, which means this trigger is positioned forward in the right direction. To do that, what I've done is I've gone into my gizmos, I've pulled out my trigger, and when I pulled out my trigger, I knew that forward was facing towards me. So when I faced it towards my gun, I knew that as long as it was facing towards me, it'd be facing forward. And then when I drag through my trigger first, and then drag through the rest of my objects for the gun, I know that if my hand is pointing in the right direction, I've set my trigger up right. And the direction that the trigger is pointing or the hand is pointing is going to determine the direction that the bullet fires. So if your hand is pointing sideways, what we'll do is then go into the grouping. So you hit the zoom in button here in the group properties panel, and we can then rotate our trigger. And so once this is rotated, my bullet will now fire this direction. Say I had it backwards and my bullet was firing in the wrong direction. I'd then zoom into my grouping and then rotate my trigger. And we'll get to that as we write our script. But for now, we've got it set up correctly. So that is how we do that. And now that we've created our gun, it's about time we get it scaled down to human size. So if you're curious how to do that, we're going to first select our gun and all of our bullets. And with that selected, we can now come down to our player and use this little avatar spawn creature. I'm going to turn snapping off to make it easier. And then just use this as my reference point. And I'm thinking that is about the size that I want this to be. Perfect. All right, so with that scaled correctly, we'll go ahead and let go. Now that we have this at a human scale, we're going to need to turn off snapping. With snapping turned off, we can now grab our hand anchor and make sure to align it center of the gun, because if they're left-handed, the grab anchor will be the inverse of this around the red. So you just want to make sure it's flipped, so that way if they're right-handed or left-handed, it can still be grabbed. And I like the way that holds. So let's go ahead and try it out by going into play mode. We can now grab the gun, and you can see that's how it holds with the right hand. Not bad. And if I grab it with my left hand, not bad either. Cool. Now the next thing to note is if we go up into our properties panel and we go to the More tab, I'd highly recommend making sure handoff grab to is only you, meaning only the person grabbing the gun can pick the gun up. So no one can grab it from your hand. If it's no one, then not even yourself can pull it. So if you had it in your right hand, you couldn't grab it with your left hand. So that's why I recommend only you. With our gun made, it is now time that we grab some visual effects. So I'm going to go grab the particle visual effect. I'm also going to go to our sounds and search for a fire sound effect. So we search for fire. We got fire extinguisher, fireball, weapon fire. Weapon fire is pretty close to what we're looking for, so we'll go ahead and grab that. We'll open up the properties panel on our visual effect, and then we're just going to go ahead and turn looping on for now. This is going to allow us to test it out, also scaling it into the right position. So if we click on our gun, once it's selected, it'll hold its position. And we know that we want this to be relatively big, but not... Oh, cool. That wasn't intended. Undo. Guns with gravity are so much fun. So we're going to go ahead and scale this down Right there is just about right. And now we're going to grab our gun, open up the properties panel. And remember, if you press and hold forward on your joystick, you can bring your properties panel to you. Now what we're going to do is grab our visual effects. With the visual effects selected, we can now zoom into the object, which will bring it back to its position. We can also turn snapping on and snap this visual effect right here to the tip of the gun. I'm going to leave the visual effects properties panel open so that way we can utilize it in our script and attach it very easily to the gun. We're going to turn looping off and play on start off. We're going to deselect by clicking once with our joystick so that way we don't accidentally remove the visual effect. And now we'll click exit. And now the visual effect is in, but we also need to bring in the sound effect. So let's go ahead and grab our sound effect, scale it down as well. And this one I want to bring up and put it on top of the gun. And so once again, we'll select the sound effect, zoom into the grouping. I'm going to turn snapping on and snap that right to the center top of the gun. There we go. Perfect. Open up the properties panel. That way we have access to it once we leave. Unselect by clicking once with my joystick, and then click the zoom out. There we go. On our gun sound properties, we can adjust the pitch, we can adjust the volume, which I'm going to lower a little bit so it's not super loud. I'm going to turn play on start off so we don't hear it on start. I think 100 is not a bad distance, but I'm going to lower it down to about 60 so you can't hear it just forever and ever and ever. And with that, our audio is set up for our sound effects. Okay, so first things first, we've created a script block. Once we open up our script block, I'm going to start by renaming mine Lake's Gun. Perfect. All right, so now when the world is started, we want to create a list. So let's go create some variables first. So the first variable we're going to create is going to be an object list. We check this list slider, and then the name is going to be bullets. Perfect. All right, so we've got our bullets, and then we're going to need 4 object variables. So this will be called B1, and then we're going to need 3 more. So we'll do B2, B3, and B4. And now that we have our bullets, we also need to know which bullet we're currently on. So we'll create a number variable called current bullet. And then we're going to have a visual effect, which is also a object variable. So we'll create a VFX object variable, as well as a sound effects object variable. There we go. So now we have our visual effects, our sound effects. We need to know where we're firing the bullet from. So that is the trigger that we disabled. So that's an object which we'll call fire from. And then we'll press confirm. So the next thing we're going to do is head to our operators tab. And from the operators tab, scroll all the way to the bottom where you're going to see list functions. And we're going to grab add to list. If you hold on to this while under when world is started, you can joystick to the right to duplicate this 4 times. And then once you have add to value to list, we go to our variables tab, go to the very bottom where we created the bullets list, and drop that on the right side, again using the joystick to the right to duplicate to fill out all 4. And then we're going to grab B1, 2, 3, and 4 for the values, and this is going to add all 4 of our bullets to this bullet list. From our events tab, you'll scroll down to controller events where you can grab when index trigger is pressed. Drag that over, and the next thing we want to do is go to our motion tab. If you scroll down on your motion tab, you're going to see launch from object. This is key to making a gun work. With launch from self in here, we do not want to launch self and not from self and not at a speed of 10. In fact, we need to actually go to our variables tab and create one more number variable called speed. And this will allow us to use this script on multiple guns. And so I'd recommend setting our default speed inside the variables section to be 40. And so when we drag speed over into our launch from, we'll drag that into the speed section on the far right. Now we're launching at a speed of 40. We'll grab fire from, and that is where we are launching from. So we'll put that in the from slot. And what are we launching? Well, we're going to be launching a bullet from the list. So let's go ahead back on over to our operators tab, scroll down and grab get item from list. And we're going to populate this in a minute. Before we populate this, let's head on over to our actions tab. We're going to grab play sound, and we're also going to grab play visual effect. And these once again are not self, so we'll grab and delete those by pulling down on our joystick, head to our variables tab, grab visual effect, drop that into the visual effects slot, and grab sound effects and drop that into the sound effects slot. Now, because we've put these inside of our gun object, they don't need to move, and where they are at will always be the right location, so we can just leave that just just like that. In addition to playing sounds and visual effects, we want to also play some haptics. To do that, we're going to head to our Events tab and grab two if statements, because this can either happen on the left hand or the right hand. And then we'll go to our Actions tab, scroll to the very bottom, and we're going to grab the Play Haptics on Player controller. We can then indent that under If, and now that we have that duplicated to the right using our joystick to the right, we can see Play Haptics on right, and then we can drop down to Play on left. Now, to define when it's if left or right, we need to set this when the object is grabbed by the player. So if we go to our Events tab, scroll down to Grab Events, when object is grabbed by player. What we want to do when the object is grabbed by player is define if it is a left hand or a right hand. So we'll grab two more if statements, and then we'll go to our Variables tab and create a new variable called Boolean, and this will be defaulted to right. And so we're going to assume it's right, and it doesn't matter whether it starts false or true, but what we want to do is then go and grab under the Operators tab at the very top, you're going to see a greater than or equal to and a less than or equal to. And what we want to do is drag that into each of these if statements. Now we're going to head to our Operators tab and scroll to the Vector Math, where we can get distance 2. We're going to drop distance 2 into the A, B, and AB of both if statements. Using our joystick to the right, we can easily duplicate that. And then what we're getting the distance to, if we scroll down to player, we get position of player and drop that into all 4 of the A slots. So all of our A slots are for the player. And the first one is left hand, the second one is right hand, and then under the second if statement, it'll be the reverse, which will be right hand and left hand. So basically what we're checking to see is if the left hand or the right hand is closer to the gun object. And so then we go scroll up to objects, and you'll see position of object, which we'll put into the B slot of all 4. Now with that in place, we want to see the object self. So we head to our Values tab, grab self. We'll drop that into the position of objects. There we go. And then for player, we're going to grab the player from when object is grabbed and just duplicate that into all 4 of the position of player. You might have noticed I made one little bitty mistake. So what I need to do is delete distance 2 here and distance 2 here. And I have it already reversed using the less than symbol. And so what I just need to do is duplicate down and use the exact same order from above, because the top one represents when the left hand is greater than the right, and the bottom one represents when the left hand is less than the right. So now that we have that set up, we can now set our Booleans. We go to our Values tab, scroll to the top, grab our set to, indent that under both if statements, go into our Variables tab, and we'll grab that Boolean right, put that under the variable section. So we're setting right to be the value. Under our Values tab, you'll see the Boolean input, which we will duplicate into the value slot of our set2 command. And now we know the left hand is greater than the right, so that means this one would be false for our first if statement, and for our second if statement, right will be true. And now we've set it up to define when it is left-handed or right-handed. When we scroll back down to when index trigger is pressed by grabbed player, we remember we had 2 if statements here. Now with our new Boolean friend, we can bring that over and we play right when right is true. And if it's not true, so we go to our Operators tab, scroll to the very top, and you'll see the not command, and we can use not. And then we'll grab that same Boolean, and when it's not right, meaning it's left, we'll then play haptics on the left hand. Now 10 milliseconds of haptics is not enough, so I definitely recommend going to more like 50 or 70. So we're going to grab this and go up to 50. You'll also note you want to drop in your player here under the player hand of, and then medium with sharp isn't bad. You can play with these settings. There's also light, strong, depending on how you want your gun to feel. These will affect it just differently. So you also have sharp, coarse, and soft, but we're going to keep it with medium and sharp for 50 milliseconds for now. We have launch get item from list. Now, which item are we getting from the list? Well, that's easy. We go to our variables and we're getting the current bullet, and we're getting that from the list bullet list. Okay, so now we know which one we're getting, but how do we know what the current bullet is? Well, the current bullet starts at 0, and it's going to work its way up through the list. So the first thing we're going to do is go to our values tab, scroll to the top, and grab set to. So when index trigger is pressed, we're going to set current bullet. So you can grab current bullet and joystick to the right up into the set command. And then we're going to go to our operators tab, and we are going to add 1. So then we're going to go and grab current bullet again, drop it into the A slot, and then go to our values tab and grab a number input so we can add 1 to this. Now that we've added 1 to this, we need to immediately run an if statement. So if you go to our events tab, grab if, and what are we checking? Well, we're checking to see if this number is equal to, so we'll grab logic equals, and if current bullet equals the length, so if you scroll to the bottom of the operators tab, you're going to see length of list, and we're going to see if length of list, and that's the bullets list, so you can grab that and joystick to the right or grab it from your variables tab. Now, if current bullet equals the length of the bullet list, then we have a problem. You can't fire a bullet that's not in the list, and the length of the bullet list is 1 bullet past the length of the list. So the way this works is the first bullet in the list represents 0. So if you have bullets of 1 in the list, then that's going to be 1 greater than what you can actually pull from the list. So when that happens, or say in our case there's 4 bullets, then you'd get 3 is the highest you can go to. So when it equals 4, we need to set it back to 0. So we immediately grab our set from above, duplicate it under our if statement, make sure it's indented. Now we delete the plus symbol, grab our number 1, we can joystick to the right, and I'm going to change that to 0. You can also grab another number value from your values tab. And now that we've set current bullet to be 0, we have a cycle that will cycle us through the bullets every time the index trigger is pressed. Now this should work, so let's go ahead and test this out, and then we're going to make it local so it runs a little bit more efficiently. So to test this out, we're going to go ahead and select our gun, open up the properties panel for our gun, and from our properties panel, go ahead and select the attached script, and then find your script Lake's gun. Perfect. And with that script, I know I need to attach all of these different objects. So let's go ahead and start with the particle effects. I'm going to drag particle effects into the visual effects slot. I'm going to go up to our sound effects and drag sound effects into the sound effects slot. And then our fire from, I'm going to go ahead and zoom into my group, open up the properties panel for my trigger, and I can press forward to get it to the right size. And I can even hold on it if it's glitching out. And then we'll zoom out. Then grab that trigger as our fire from location. And then last but not least, we just need to put in our 4 bullets. So we'll go to our 4 bullets here and open up the properties panel for all 4 of these. And then our last one, bullet number 4. Now with all 4 bullets in, we should have a working gun, so we might as well give it a try. Grab our gun. Oh, they almost work, but they're getting stuck in location. With one simple fix, we just need to go into our bullets and change them to be not just animated, but interactive, and we have to give them physics. Now, you don't have to give them gravity, but you could if you want to. And so now that we have that set up, we just need to go do that for all 4 of these. Now, with all 4 of those set up, we can go try it out. So we'll come in here, grab our gun. Boom! There we go, 4 bullets, firing quite nicely. Now I am finding the haptics seem to be backwards for me. I'm getting them on my left hand, not my right hand. And so I'm not sure if I set this up right. Yeah, it seems to be... Oh, now it's working.
Don't point that thing at me.
It seems to be working now? I think there's something backwards here, so let's go find out what went wrong. So for whatever reason, our haptics seem to be backwards, so we're just going to go ahead and switch them left and right. I don't know exactly why that's happening, but it is happening. So now, let's try it out. Grab the gun, and now they're playing on the right hand. Perfect, there we go. So now with that set up, we've got our gun that fires, has some really nice haptics. Nice visual effects too, nice sound effects. Now that we have our gun working correctly, let's make it work local. To start with that, go to your gear icon at the top of your script panel, select it, and then change it from default to local. Go ahead and click save. Now it's important to note that when a local event is running on a script, it doesn't start running until the object is grabbed, attached, or interacted with by a player. And so for that, when world is started, this will not start until the player has grabbed the gun. So just remember, if you put something in here that's supposed to happen when the world is started, it's not going to happen until the player grabs the gun. And the when world is started runs every time a new player grabs the gun. So now when the object is grabbed by a player, the first thing we need to do is transfer ownership of all of the objects to the player. So if we go to our Actions tab, scroll down to Player, we can grab Transfer Ownership of Object to Player. We're going to bring in quite a few of these, and we'll put them at the top of the when object is grabbed. So we need 4 of these for each of the bullets. We're going to need 1 of these for the visual effect, 1 for the sound effect, as well as 1 for self. And we might need another one, but we'll bring it in if we do. So then if we head to our variables tab, we can go grab all of these different individual bullets. So we'll go grab B1, and then we'll go ahead and grab the visual effect, the sound effect. We're also going to want to grab the fire from object. And then the last one we need is self. So we'll go to value input and grab self. And with all of that set up, we just need to drag in our player, which we can select and then use our joystick to the right to duplicate. There we go. Now that we've transferred ownership to the player, what this does is it says, hey, headset, you're the one who's allowed to run this object and be in charge of it. You get to define when the visual effect is played. You get to define when the sound effect is played, and then it'll broadcast to all the other players. So if you're the player holding this gun, you're going to see that sound effect and visual effect moments before everyone else does because it's based off your trigger being pulled. That's what gives it that really snappy feeling. And now that we've transferred this all to the player, let's go ahead and try it. Grab the gun and oh wow, is that snappy? Yeah, try that. That feels just so much nicer. It's like really fine, but it feels amazing. Thank you so much for checking out this gun tutorial. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Local scripts are super powerful and we've just scratched the surface. Look forward to seeing you in Horizon. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to like and subscribe. Bye! Pew, 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 pew. Pew, pew, pew. Oh no, wait, I got respawned? Oh, BurnBuns hooking up a respawn script on his. Very nice. No, you can't get me. Oh, you got me.